So I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is that you celebrate. I hope it was wonderful and memorable. And we're approaching 2019, brand new year, but of course winter is still here. So today we're going to start with a new paperscape. A paper sculpture. You guys have been wanting more, so we've developed some really cool stuff. Well, in this case, the paper sculpture is winter-based, and you can kind of see what it's going to look like when it's done. We just need to layer everything. So it's pretty simple. I've kind of just pre-layered everything, and it's a series of, well, just gluing and layering. Nothing crazy, pretty simple. And found this really beautiful print here, this cardstock that we're going to use as our base to kind of mimic the night sky. And what we're going to do first is we're going to grab these little L-shaped pieces. And the purpose of these is to help us with the alignment and centering of these pieces, but also for the placement of the moon, which you can see here. I kind of inked it with a nice lilac or lavender color, and I just kind of hid it in the middle too to give it the impression of little craters on the moon. That was just, I don't know, just kind of got a little crazy with it. So you do have two pieces. You probably only need one, but you could do two if you want. So the idea is to take this piece and put it up against the edge of your piece here, top left. And then what we're going to do with it, just a pencil, just kind of create a little L there. Okay, that's just a little guide to help you with centering. Okay, I'm going to do that on this side too, and I'll show you why in a second, because we're actually going to put our moon down first. So I've got that in the corner, just going to lightly put my little mark there. So you may not be able to see that, but I just kind of penciled in on the inner edge to help me with the placement on that. Now, this piece here that cuts out, this is to help you with the placement of the moon so that we can get a nice consistent result here. Okay, and you can see how it's cut out. We're going to place it down like this, and we're going to take our moon and we're going to pop it right in here. This is where it's going to need to go. Okay, so once you have that set, and we're actually going to glue this flat, you can move this away. So actually, before I do that, I'm going to leave this in place here, and I'm going to get my glue on my little moon here, just making sure that I've got this nice and aligned. If it's off just a tad, it's not the end of the world, so don't worry about it too much. But let's get our glue on our moon, just really subtle, and just figure out how you want to position it. Just pop it right into that little puzzle piece area, move this out of the way, and then just push that down. Okay, there we go. Beautiful. All right, so we are done with this. We are done with this. And we can move on to actually assembling the various layers. Now you can see here that I already kind of have them laid out just to help myself remember how everything goes. And we're going to start with the backmost layer, which is our darling little couple here. Okay, and this layer is going to be pop dotted. Okay, and we're going to put it like that, and you can see how we've got a beautiful silhouette of them right up against the moon. Okay, so the reason that we did two layers on this, or just gluing this together, is just to make it a little more sturdy. I have some paper sculptures that we did over a year and a half ago, and they're holding up very well, especially after you put them in a shadow box with a piece of glass. So this is pretty straightforward. All we're going to do is just take and glue these two layers together. If you have some repositionable spray adhesive, it might make your job easier. I don't like to use it because it gives me headaches, and I don't really want to go outside in the cold right now and use it and get my mask on and all that stuff. So we're going to be doing a lot of this with these pieces, and when I say that, what I mean is we're going to be kind of just gluing this down in little sections. I'm not going to try to do everything all at once because it will probably not work out, especially with some of the snowflake pieces. There's just a lot of detail, and I don't think we're going to be able to cover all of that detail in one fell swoop here. So we're gonna do our best to get our glue in all these little nooks and crannies. You don't have to get it everywhere. Just do your best to get it in as many little areas as you can. Now you can see that this glue is already starting to dry, and we don't want to over cake it with glue because then it's going to start to warp. So we just have to do our best. Oops, I forgot this little area here. This is where the repositionable spray adhesive really comes into play. But again, I'm not going to use it because I don't want to inhale that stuff. So just line that up nicely. I'm looking at the trees right now, and then also the edges here to get that all nice and lined up. And just press that down. And if it's off just a smidge, it's not the end of the world. It almost kind of creates a nice little beveled shadow, like a drop shadow sort of thing. I'm speaking in terms of Photoshop. Okay, so we'll get that down. And then, you know, while you're doing this, if there's little areas that maybe you didn't get enough glue on, you can certainly use my little trick here where you put a little bit of glue on a scrap piece of paper. In this case, I'm using the little piece that we used to help us with alignment, and just give those little areas a little extra love. Okay, so you can be as tedious as you want with this project, and that all looks great. Okay, so now we can go ahead and kind of flip this up and get our glue on the remainder of this. And just try to get that glue out to the very edges too, so that the edges don't come apart. And that's going to work out nicely for us. Okay, so first layer is glued together. And what we can do at this point is get this onto our canvas, so to speak. And we're going to pop dot this to kind of create some dimension and some nice shadows. Okay, and then the rest of it's going to go together the exact same way, basically. Okay, so I'm going to grab my little foam squares here and just begin applying them to the back of this. And I'm going to try to center these as accurately as possible. Kind of just work the perimeter first, and then there's a little test that I do to see which areas might need some more. Okay, so obviously that's not going to be enough. We do need to give this decent support throughout, just to ensure that it doesn't begin to bow or warp anywhere. Okay, so, and then just try to be kind of methodical about the placement of all of these, and just get them nice and staggered. And then what we'll do is we'll take this and just flip it upside down. And then what I do is I kind of press and push down on certain areas and see where it really gives way too much. Like here, you can see how that's pushing down. Here it's not moving at all. Here it's moving. Here it's moving. So I know that I need to put some in those areas there, just to kind of make sure that it stays nice and straight for me throughout its life. You take good care of this and put it in an actual shadow box with some glass. It will protect it from, I won't completely protect it from humidity, which is paper's worst enemy, but it will certainly help. We've had requests for paper frames, and I think we're going to make them, but I personally wouldn't use them because they don't offer as much protection for pieces like this. So you're welcome to try it, but I would prefer that this be protected with an actual wooden element with a piece of glass to make sure that it really stands the test of time. Okay, so I'm going to flip this over again, and I'm just going to do my little push test in all these little areas here. And it looks like that's probably good. You could do more if you want. That's completely up to you. I think I'm gonna be happy with the amount that I have on there. So I'm not gonna bore you with this. I'm gonna take the little backings off of this, and then I will meet you in the next little section here where I place this down, and then we'll just move on to the next layer. Okay, so I've got the backings off there. Now, one thing I forgot to do was to put my little locator, my little guide here on the bottom, just so that I know that I've got the orientation or the placement correct towards the bottom. If it's off just a tad, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so we've got that. And again, I'd probably start with just the bottom, maybe. Make sure that, you know what, might as well just do all 4 sides. I don't know why I'm slacking here. Let's get this one down here too. And just make our lives easier. So you should do all 4 sides. Just, it's good to have the guide there so that you're not guessing whether it's centered or level or whatever. Okay, you know what, I'm gonna hold this up a little bit so that it doesn't kind of fall down, and get that nice and aligned. And then even with the marks, just make sure that it looks nice and even here all the way across before you place it down permanently. And then the other side should just kind of fall into place. There we go. Just lightly touch it down so that those little foam squares make nice contact. And there we go. There's our first layer. Beautiful. Okay, I think this is going to make a really great, could be a great anniversary gift. Could be a great wedding gift for someone that's having a winter wedding. I know those are quite popular because of, well, cost savings, and you know, some people prefer winter. So that's great. Okay, so next layer is this layer here. Now you'll notice that this layer kind of comes in a lot more as far as the center goes. This layer is not the second layer. It kind of has more of a hole or opening in the center. So that's, I'm going to do that next after this layer. Okay, so just need to glue these 2 layers to each other. Okay, so we're going to glue this layer together, just like we did this layer, and then we're going to pop dot this onto this layer here. So we've got a beautiful natural frame for our lovely couple. Okay, now one other thing too that you want to keep in mind, on the bottom right-hand corner of each of these sheets, each of these layers, is a little identifier. Okay, that you always want to make sure that that identifier is in the bottom right-hand corner, so that you know what the correct orientation is. Otherwise, you might get it upside down or sideways and it just won't look right, or as designed, I should say. So make sure that the identifier is on the bottom right-hand corner, okay? Okay, so just as we did the first time, I'm gonna begin by just kind of gluing probably just maybe just half of it up to here roughly. We'll get that in place first, and then we'll do the bottom half, just so that we're not scurrying trying to get everything done in one shot here. Okay, and again, I would be kind of sparse with the glue because you don't want it to warp the paper, and this glue bottle needs a little help. Okay. Glue bottle is somewhat cooperating now. And again, a lot of details here. So what I would do is I would just dab in the larger areas, get as much glue as you can on here. You're not going to get it all, so don't even try. This, again, spray glue, if you have it and you want to use it, you're going to get full coverage on that. But I would go very easy on it because that can also kind of warp the paper, and we don't want that. And, you know, just get enough glue on the inside here, and then if we need to go back and kind of, you know, adjust or add a little bit of glue here or there in some areas that maybe aren't staying in place the way we want them to, we can do that. But just make sure that you have the orientation correct, that you have it nice and aligned. And just sandwich those two pieces together with the glue in between, just like that, and then press. Okay. Now, one other thing too, I'm not as concerned about it with this layer, but with this layer here, what we may also want to do is, after we get the glue down, I'm just going to pop it underneath my little pad here, just to kind of flatten it out a little bit. Sometimes that glue does some weird things, and we don't want that. Okay, so now we can go ahead and take this and just kind of peel it back. Okay, and don't bend it too much. Maybe just work a little corner like this, and just start throwing down some dabs here. Let me get the perimeter. And again, you don't need to get glue on every single inch of this. They kind of work together as a team, and it's like the sum of all the parts that make this effective. Every little single area doesn't need to be held down with glue. But you know, the more you can get, the better. But actually, I think if we cake this whole thing with glue, it would start to look kind of weird as far as that effect that you get from applying too much glue to something. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to pop that down and press. Okay, and then just kind of give it an inspection. Maybe, you know, kind of pick at some of the little areas with the snowflakes, especially those tiny little details, and grab your scrap piece of paper, get some glue on there, and you know, give these little areas a little extra love if they need them. I don't think anyone's really going to notice. And again, some of these areas, there's glue close to them, so it's holding it down enough. But you know, if it's not holding it down completely and you see it kind of peeling away from the layer beneath it, just give it a little extra love. Okay, so just kind of showing you what I would do to make this a little more sturdy and a little more together. But as you can see, it's pretty darn good, despite the fact that we didn't get glue on every single inch of this. I don't recommend that you do that anyway. It's going to get all cakey with glue, and we don't want that. Okay, so as I mentioned, I think a good idea before we pop dot this is maybe just to pop it underneath your work mat, or if you have a large book, just pop it on there and let it dry nice and flat. Okay, and then we have the final layer here, which is this beautiful silver foil that almost has like an icy effect to it. And we're going to glue this down onto this little pink shadow layer, and that's going to be the frontmost element. So that's, again, it's going to be very simple. Just make sure that you get the orientation correct. Okay, so let me get my glue on the back of this. Hey Siri, what time is it?
It's 3:05 p.m.
Okay, now this silver foil paper, it's not porous on the back, so that means that I have a little more time to get glue on this before it sets. It's not being absorbed by the paper like it is with the AC cardstock, which is nice. Kind of buys me a little bit of time. I can be a little more methodical with where I'm placing it, and a little more just have a little more time, basically. And again, it's never too late to go back and just touch up some of these little areas with a little additional glue after it's already in place. And again, make sure you get that glue out to the very edges here so that you don't have that peeling up. Remember, this is going to be our topmost layer, so this is the one that needs to look its best. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I want to make sure that I get this positioned correctly the first time around. Let's pop that right there. And uh-oh, wait a second. I get that right? Yeah, see my indicator is down here. That's just so that you know how to apply it after the fact. Okay, and I'm kind of holding it so that just the center part is touching initially. Just be very careful placing that down. Make sure that you get it nice and centered. That looks nice. And that should meet up with the very edges very precisely. Here we go. Flatten that out. Beautiful. Look at that. That's nice. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, if you need to, I'm going to give this a second before I peel it back, but I think I got glue on all of the little perimeter pieces. Let me take a look here. Yeah, see? So let me grab my little scrap, throw a little extra glue on there, just nice and flat. And you can kind of just find the little areas where you've got the little pieces kind of sticking up. You can kind of bend it a little bit just to figure out what's pulling away from the very tip. Like right here, you can see this guy, he's kind of pulling away. I'm just gonna give him a little love, push that down. And really, we're almost done here, aside from the layering with the pop dots. There's not much else to it. So it should go pretty quick. I think the most time-consuming aspect of this is the little foam squares, which isn't really that bad. Okay, so as I mentioned, if there are any little areas here that are not sitting nice and flat on the paper, you can just grab your little scrap piece here from the little alignment tool, as I'll call it, and just go in and just touch up any little area that might need a little extra glue to sit nice and flat for you. But this looks good. This looks really good, actually. And again, I'm going to remind you again, make sure that your little identifier is on the bottom right-hand corner. That's going to ensure that you've got everything lined up properly, so you can see how beautiful that's going to look, especially when we get a little shadow going on there. So these layers are going to go on in just a second. Let me pull out this layer that is nice and flat. You can see how flat that is now. It sits nice and flat. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to pop dot this onto this layer. Okay, and then once we're done doing that, we're going to pop dot this one onto this layer, and then this one onto this layer to complete the look. And that's going to be beautiful. It doesn't look as good flat, I don't think. I think you do need to do the pop dots, otherwise it just looks like a hodgepodge and there's not as much dimension. So, yeah. So if you feel confident in the process here, you can skip ahead, and technically you probably don't even need to watch me do this anymore because you understand the concept. You understand that we're just pop dotting this, and you understand the placement. So you can go ahead and finish this off. Otherwise, you can just hang out with me, and I'm just going to jibber jabber here while I do these things and walk you through the rest of the process. Okay. As we did with the first layer, kind of starting with the perimeter, corners, the centers, and then experience from the first layer has told me that I'm going to need these here between the first ones that I put down, just to make sure that it doesn't bow or bend in that area. Okay, so I think this is definitely the right route to take. And then what we'll end up doing is taking some of these foam squares, and we're going to apply them into areas where we can. So like in between, in the middle of like this large snowflake here, obviously that's a good spot for one to keep this whole area up. Okay, and then whatever other areas we can find, let's flip this over and let's do our little push test. Okay, so I can tell that these little areas probably need one little foam square. This is holding this up, this whole area up really well. It's not a lot of area as far, because there's so many cutouts. It's very light, so you don't need that many. Okay, but I think the best thing to do here, because these areas are kind of small, what we may need to do is grab our scissors and maybe just take a section of this. I'm going to cut this off because it's going to freak me out to have those mixed in with these. And then just take your scissors. You can literally cut these in half, just like that. Okay, so you've got even smaller ones here that will fit into these smaller little areas here. So I'm going to pop one right here, and then I'm going to pop one right here, roughly. And I think that's going to hold that area up nicely. And then I'm going to put one here. There's a nice little area there with a lot of actual area. I don't know how else to say it. And let's see here. Let's do our little push test. Yeah, that's good. This little snowflake here, you know what? He doesn't have a lot of mass, not a lot of surface area. So I'm not really worried about him bending too much. But if you want, you can certainly place a little foam square in that area. And actually, I think that is a little too large, but I can go ahead and take this and I can cut it in half again, just to make really tiny little squares. Okay, so whatever you got to do to kind of keep this nice, and there we go, see that? It's a really tiny little square. And where'd my other one go? I lost track of it, that's okay. But you get the idea. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull the backings off of these, and we're gonna get this next layer on here. Now, one other thing too, before I forget, when we put this on, you know, I have to keep in mind that some of these areas where we've put these pop dots or these foam squares are going to rest on the purple section. Okay, now, but some of these areas, like these snowflakes here, they're not resting on anything. You may need to double up on the snowflakes that are up here. You don't need to worry about this section here because that's resting on the purple. Anything here is not going to be resting on anything, so we're going to need two layers to account for the difference in height. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel off the backings on the snowflakes up at the top, and I'm going to double those up with another layer of foam squares so that they will actually hit the background. Okay, now this little tiny guy, that worked out nicely. Okay, so you understand what I mean here. That's two layers. It's 2 layers thick, so we're going to need to make sure that we have 2 layers of foam squares on here to meet the height requirements for making sure that it's anchored properly. Okay, and that it'll work out fine. It'll work out just fine. I've done this so many times with other paper sculptures. I've never had any problems. And yeah, so I've got one more up here. Just pop that on there. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take the backing off of this, and I will meet you at the next section here. Okay, so the backing on my little foam squares is off. Please make sure that the little indicator is on the bottom right. And I'm going to stand up for this just to make sure that I get it down on the next layer accurately. Okay. And that's all we're doing. Just making sure, whoops. Just making sure that we've got it nice and overlapped as accurately as possible. And there we go. And then just press down nice and gently. And there we go. Look at that. Okay. Beautiful. Yeah, see, you can already tell the difference. And the reason it looks better when you do the pop dots is because of the little shadows. It totally changes the entire feel of the piece, just like we did. And then we're gonna pop that right on top of the previous layer. So go ahead and do that. And just kind of take with you the tips from the last one as far as the placement of your foam squares. Just make sure you get the outside corners and then add a little support in between just to make sure that it all sits nice and doesn't bend or bow. It'll help preserve and, you know, keep the piece looking tip-top for a good long time. Okay, and then now this, before we put this on, we're going to try to take a look at, find the areas. The outside obviously is going to rest nicely on the outer section here. So we don't have to worry about doubling up on anything there, but there may be some areas where we may need to double up on some of the foam squares just to make sure that they sit properly. So let's just test this out real quick. Whoops. And let's figure out if we need to put foam squares anywhere except for on the outside here. Okay, so we're on to the next layer here. And I've got my foam squares on here. And what I wanted to do was kind of test out where I need to put some foam squares internally here to kind of keep things propped up. So seems like it may be okay without any foam squares on the internal snowflakes. You can try it without. What I'm going to do is just try to find some larger areas internally here where we can add a few more just to help kind of keep it sturdy. So there's these areas here in the middle of these snowflakes that have space for, you know, a few little foam squares. So you definitely want to pop them in there. I'm going to put one right here. And I think these three should do the job. Maybe just a small one. Actually, we might be able to get a full one in there if we angle it like a diamond. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so that should hold that intact. And then we'll kind of move to the bottom here and get a few in place here. And I think we can, I'm gonna pop one, I'm gonna put one right here. Make sure that it's not popping through, not showing through any of the cutouts so that you don't see it. That was close. And you can kind of cut them thinner, make them a little bit thinner if you need to. And just kind of, even at this angle here, I barely see it. I'm gonna pop one right here, and I think we'll call it a day as far as that goes. And then that just leaves one more little layer. All right, so again, just get your foam squares on here, and I'm gonna begin peeling these off, and I will meet you at the next part here where we apply this to the existing project. And it'll be done in no time. Okay, so I have my foam squares all taken apart here. Again, looking for the little marker to indicate the bottom right-hand corner, and I found it. So again, I'm going to stand up just to make sure that when I lay this down, I get it nice and lined up. Pardon my head for just a moment. There we go, and that looks good. And we'll just push that down gently into these little areas here. There we go. All right. So there you can see how that's starting to come together. And then last but not least, we're going to put this layer down, finish this off, and This one doesn't have any, any weird little areas where we're not going to be able to get these foam squares down. So this one's going to prove to be a lot easier. And again, we've done this a few times now, so we know roughly where we need to place these foam squares to keep this thing nice and balanced and consistent as far as the support goes. There we go. And then I'll probably just take a few extra foam squares and put them more towards the inside of the little sculpture here, just to give these a little extra padding. And let's just make sure that all of these areas have something to actually rest on. And for the most part, they do. I wouldn't put them all the way out to the extremities here. I would kind of keep them a little bit inside, kind of like that maybe. Especially these guys here, I wouldn't worry too much about those. Those should be okay. And I think, let me do my little push test here. See if there's any areas that need a little extra love. And maybe one right here. Okay, so final layer here. We may as well just hang out while I pull these off. Now, one thing I've noticed about these foam squares is, depending on the brand, some of the backings come off easier than others. I'm not really sure why. This brand, I need to use like a little X-Acto just to get a little pressure in there to help peel it off. I have fingernails, but that doesn't seem to be enough. And if you try to do it with your fingernails, you can kind of go crazy. Because it's a little bit of a tedious process, but it's not so bad once you kind of get in the groove. Just work your way around. Now, I know that in the past, I've actually forgotten to take the backings off of one of these, but it's okay. If you forget one or two, it's still kind of helping it stay in place. It's just not adhering to the layer behind it, which is all right. Not a huge deal if you miss a couple, but try not to. I always kind of, at the end of this process, just kind of take a look at it. You can tell usually that the backing is off because it looks a little more glossy in the light, where when the backing is on, it's more matte, it's not as reflective. Okay, so now I just have to make sure that I've got the right one in the right place. And I don't think this one has the little identifier on it. The purple piece here does. So it's this is the bottom right. Okay, we'll go ahead and wrap this project up here. And just get that positioned, pardon my head again. Get that nice and lined up. Beautiful. Give it a press. And voila. Okay. So I have my little frame here. I took the glass out so that we don't have a reflection. Pop this in here. So you'll see that that fits in there perfectly. Get yourself a 12 by 12 frame. I'm just going to pop a couple of these down just to hold it intact. And there is our beautiful sculpture ready to go. Now I could totally see this with a caption here. Let me show you on this camera here. You can throw a nice little caption here, maybe a wedding date, an anniversary date, obviously, the name of the couple, the couple's last name, whatever you see fit to decorate this with as far as the vinyl goes. And of course, it's optional, not necessary, but it would definitely make it a more personalized gift if you add a little bit of vinyl. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the project. Very simple, pretty quick, and the machine pretty much does most of the work for you. It's more or less just a layering, a paper piecing sort of project. Very simple. I think anybody with any experience level should be able to do this. Actually, more than likely, you shouldn't have any problems with this. It's very straightforward. So if you enjoyed hanging out with me and crafting with me today, take a moment to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. And if you make this, especially if you customize it for a wedding gift or an anniversary gift, we would love to see it. So visit us in the official Facebook group. Just do a search for Dreaming Tree Group on Facebook and join myself and the almost 9,000 other dreamers and that are inspiring us daily. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I look forward to crafting with you again. Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.